Welcome. Think of something you already own. Your phone, your bed, the mug from this morning. Notice how you hold it in your mind. No effort, no straining, no sessions. It simply exists. Now think about what you want to manifest. Feel what happens the very moment you do. There is a reaching, a quiet pushing towards something still out there. Every single time you try to manifest, you confirm it is not here. That is the hidden instruction. Trying is the rehearsal of absence. I did not say try harder. The real reason why is stranger than you think. Let me stay with that experiment a little longer, because what I just asked you to notice is not a metaphor. It is a precise psychological observation, and everything that follows depends on it. Your phone, your bed, the chair you are sitting in right now, or the couch, or wherever you have settled in to listen. When you bring any of those things to mind, there is nothing to push through. No resistance, no effort required. You do not have to convince yourself they are real. You do not need to repeat affirmations about them, or build emotional intensity around them, or wait for a sign that they are on their way. They are already yours, and your entire relationship to them is completely, almost boringly unremarkable. That is the key word. Unremarkable. Now bring your attention to what you want to manifest, and this time do something specific. Do not think about the thing itself. Just notice the quality of how you are holding it, not what you are thinking about, but how you are thinking about it. The texture of the relationship, the inner position. Is it unremarkable? For most people, even for people who have studied this material for years, who can quote my books and lectures from memory, who have built consistent morning and evening practices, no. Underneath all the sincerely practiced technique, there is still something that feels like reaching, a subtle urgency, a quiet wondering whether the method is effective, a monitoring quality running underneath every session. Am I feeling it enough? Is something shifting? Is this actually going to work? And that monitoring quality has a cost, not just in terms of results, in terms of how it feels to carry it daily. There is a kind of low-level exhaustion that comes from being in a constant state of trying, reaching, checking, wondering, hoping, and then wondering again. A background hum of effort that never fully turns off. You may have felt this without naming it, the way a desire can make you slightly more aware of its own absence, the longer you pursue it without any visible movement. The longer you try, the heavier the trying becomes. That difference in quality, the settled, unremarkable familiarity of something already owned, versus the subtle, persistent reaching towards something still desired, is not a minor thing. It is the entire problem. And once you can feel that difference clearly, everything I was pointing to begins to make a different kind of sense. Here is where the mistake typically begins. I want to trace it to its root, because it tends to happen before any formal practice even starts. The moment you decide you really want something, feel the full weight of wanting it, the mind tends to settle into one of a few familiar grooves. When I finally have this, everything changes. Or I just need to believe hard enough and it will come. Or I have been doing the work consistently. Why isn't it here yet? And sometimes, after months of sincere effort, the quietly exhausted version, maybe I am missing something. Maybe I need a different technique. Maybe there is one step I keep skipping without realizing it. Read those sentences slowly and ask yourself a simple question. What is hidden inside every one of them? Each one positions you as someone who does not yet have the thing. Each one assumes the desired reality is still out there, still approaching, still belonging to some future moment, still something to eventually receive. And if you are practicing manifestation from that internal position, then every session reinforces precisely the state you are trying to leave. Think about what that actually means, not abstractly, personally. Every affirmation spoken from the position of someone waiting for the affirmation to become real. Every visualization done from the position of someone who does not yet live inside what they are visualizing. Every moment of straining to feel it harder. All of it rehearsing the identity of the one who wants and waits. The more earnestly you try, the more fluent you become at being the person for whom the thing has not arrived. This is the hidden mechanism, the one that makes sincere, sustained effort produce no movement. And it is uncomfortable to look at directly because it means the problem was never the intensity of the effort, it was the direction. Now, here is where most people take a wrong turn when they first hear this. The instinct is, all right, so I need to believe harder. I need to force myself to feel certainty. I need to really convince myself it is already done. And I understand that impulse completely. It feels like the logical correction. But stay with it for a moment. Who feels the urgent need to force certainty? Someone for whom the thing is already real, or someone who is actively trying to make it feel real. You cannot push your way into genuine occupation. Forced conviction is still trying, still reaching, still pointing toward rather than resting from. The direction of the action has not changed. It has just become more intense. And intensity in this case can feel like progress, while quietly producing the opposite. This is exactly why I was precise about the word I chose. I did not say strive. I did not say believe with sufficient force. I said assume. And assumption, in the way I use that word, is not something you produce through effort. It is a position you step into, the way you step into a room and simply are inside it. So let me give you the image that makes this clearest. Imagine a room. Inside that room is everything you want. The financial ease, the relationship that feels like home, the career that matches who you actually are, the quiet confidence of someone who knows their own value without needing to argue for it. Most people stand outside that room and knock. They knock sincerely. They knock faithfully. They knock consistently for months. They read books about the most effective knocking technique. They study variations of the knock. They refine their approach again and again, and they become genuinely skilled at knocking. But I was not describing the knocking. I was describing what it is like to already be inside the room, not approaching the door, not imagining the moment of stepping across the threshold, already in, looking out, going about an ordinary afternoon as someone who simply lives there. The room is just where they live, thinking from the room, not toward it, from, not toward. Keep that distinction close. Every time the reaching returns, that is the direction that has quietly reversed on you. Now here is where people ask the practical question. I understand that conceptually, but what does it actually feel like? What is the internal quality I am aiming for? This is exactly the point where most explanations become vague. And vagueness is where the practice quietly loses people. So let me be specific. When most people try to feel the end result, they reach for excitement. They try to build intensity, to construct vivid mental images, to strain toward a feeling that seems strong enough to count as genuine belief. And when that feeling arrives, if it arrives, it seems like something is finally working, like a threshold has been crossed. But think about this. When is the last time you felt excited about your phone, or your bed, or any of the things you genuinely, completely own? You do not feel excitement about those things. They are past excitement. They are past the point of needing to be proven to you. They simply are yours. The thought barely rises before it settles again, because there is nothing to figure out, nothing to earn, nothing to convince yourself of. The quality of genuine assumption is not excitement. It is the quiet that comes after excitement has long since dissolved. It is the slightly unremarkable, completely relaxed normality of something that has been true long enough to stop requiring your emotional attention. It does not need you to feel it. It just is. That is the internal quality you are learning to reproduce. Not manufactured emotion, not performed certainty, just the quiet, settled, almost boring quality of something that has been part of your life long enough to stop being a subject of active attention. Stop practicing the feeling of receiving. Practice the feeling of already having, where the thing has long since become part of the background. Let me make that concrete. Suppose what you want is a greater sense of financial ease. The typical manifestation approach aims toward the peak, the large number, the moment of receiving, the feeling of celebration or relief. All of that orients you toward the event of getting. That is practicing arrival. What I am describing is different. Think of a bill that currently creates a slight tightening in your chest the moment it appears. Now imagine that 6 months from now, you see it in your inbox and feel nothing remarkable. No spike of anxiety, no quick calculation of whether you can cover it this month, just a bill, one of many ordinary expenses you handle as a matter of course. You close the tab and move on without a second thought. Nothing cinematic in that scene, no celebration, no peak emotion. But that is the exact internal signature of financial ease, not the anticipation of it, the ordinariness of it. Or consider a relationship. Forget the beginning, the excitement, the first message, the declaration. Go past all of that to a quiet Tuesday several months in. Their coat is on the chair by your door. You walk past it without pausing. It is not a miracle anymore. It is just part of the room, the unremarkable background of a life that has rearranged itself around something that is now simply there. Or career, not the announcement, not the first day. 6 months in, on a slow afternoon, you glance at your own email signature in a reply you are sending. The title is there. You keep typing. You barely registered it, because it has been there long enough to stop being something you consciously notice, or confidence, not the imagined moment of finally feeling worthy, but the version of you that wakes up on an ordinary Thursday with no particular reason to feel assured, and simply does not question your own presence in the room. No argument needed, no affirmation, just the quiet self-trust of someone who stopped debating their own value a long time ago, so thoroughly that the debate itself has become foreign. Do you feel the difference? Not imagining getting it. Living somewhere, the thing is already quietly present, already familiar enough to stop registering as special. This is what living in the end actually means. Not the emotional peak of arrival, the unremarkable aftermath. The part where your life has rearranged itself around the thing, and the thing has become so ordinary, it has stopped being a subject of attention at all. And here is the execution detail that trips people up even after they understand this. I want to be very direct. The moment you complete a session with this quality, the temptation is to check, to look at circumstances, to scan for signs, to listen for confirmation, to quietly ask, is this working? Did I feel it enough? Did I do it right? That checking is trying. Just trying that has changed its name and put on quieter clothing. The moment you monitor the assumption, you have stepped back outside the room. You are standing at the threshold again, evaluating whether you belong there. And that evaluation, however brief, however quiet, reactivates the internal position of someone who is not yet settled inside. The reaching has returned. Notice also what happens to your inner conversation when you are in the checking state. The spontaneous inner dialogue shifts. Instead of the ordinary background thoughts of someone for whom something is simply true, thoughts that barely reference the desired thing because it is not a question. There is a different commentary running. Is it working yet? Why haven't I seen a sign? Am I really believing this? That inner voice is the voice of the outsider, the one still standing in the doorway, not yet inside. As long as that commentary runs underneath everything, you are relating to the desired reality as something external to monitor rather than something internal to inhabit. I pointed often to the state just before sleep as particularly valuable for this kind of practice, the threshold between waking and sleep when the body is still and the analytical mind has softened. In that receptive ground, you can inhabit a state with very little resistance. But the equally important instruction is what comes after. You do not dig the seed back up to see whether it is growing. You let it rest. The internal sign that the state is genuinely shifting is not something external. It is something you notice inside. A morning when you wake up and the thought of what you want does not carry its usual urgent freight. A day when you realize you went several hours without mentally calculating when the thing might arrive. A conversation that would once have activated the familiar anxiety, and this time something just slightly quieter moves through you instead. A growing disinterest in the question of when. Not because you have given up, but because the internal position of someone who is waiting has genuinely begun to change. That shift is the milestone. It is something you can feel and verify without needing any external evidence at all. Let me walk you through how this often unfolds. Consider someone who has been working at this sincerely for several months. They have done the visualizations. They have used affirmations and scripting and sets. They understand the principles. They genuinely believe the process can work. But underneath every session, there is a watching quality. A part of themselves monitoring the practice for results, looking for confirmation that the method is producing something, quietly keeping score. They do not realize this is happening because it feels like diligence. It feels like being a serious student of the material. Nothing shifts externally. The natural response is more effort, more intensity, more variation of technique, more searching for the one precise method that will finally produce the certainty they cannot seem to manufacture from the inside. Then, at some point, one instruction changes. They stop practicing toward the desired reality and start practicing from it, not from excitement, from quiet. A few minutes in the evening, not building toward a feeling, but dwelling in the unremarkable aftermath of a Tuesday several months after the thing became simply part of their life. No drama in the scene, just ordinary life with the desired thing present as background, the most mundane version of already having it. Something happens internally before anything changes outside. One morning, the familiar financial anxiety is just slightly less loud, not transformed, less loud. A stretch of days where the compulsive checking of a phone or a bank account happens less frequently, not through any forced discipline, but because the urgency behind it has genuinely lessened. A conversation that would previously have stirred the old feeling of lack, and this time, there is a brief beat of quiet before any reaction forms. Eventually, something shifts in circumstances, through a route they did not engineer or predict. An unexpected opening, a conversation that arrives through a connection they were not managing. I want to be clear, this is not a guaranteed formula. I am describing what the sequence tends to look like when the internal state has genuinely changed. The internal shift you can test yourself. The external result is what becomes possible when the internal foundation is real. Now, the question forming right now is the right one to ask. Is this not simply pretending? You are sitting quietly and telling yourself something that is, by every observable measure, not yet physically present in your life. How is that different from delusion? Here is what I would offer. What you are currently doing is also a practice. Every time you look at your circumstances and feel the familiar anxiety, the familiar stagnation, the familiar distance between where you are and where you want to be, you are practicing a state, very consistently, without effort, without resistance, and you do not call that pretending. You call it being realistic. But from my perspective, both of those are the same kind of act. Both are inner positions being inhabited and projected outward into experience. The question is not which one is objectively real. The question is, which state are you deliberately choosing to stand in? Practicing the internal position of someone who already has what they want does not require you to perform anything for other people. You are not lying to your bank, You are not deceiving anyone around you. You are instructing your own imagination, the inner faculty that I consistently placed at the center of all human experience. You are choosing on purpose which position to occupy internally. That is not the opposite of being conscious. That is consciousness exercised deliberately. My central teaching, consistent across everything he wrote and spoke about, was that imagination is not something that supplements your experience of reality from a distance. It is the substance from which your experience is continually assembled. What you encounter outwardly, the patterns, the relationships, the recurring circumstances, the texture of daily life, these are the outward expression of what is already occupied inwardly as a state of consciousness. And this includes the inner conversation running through your experience at every moment. Not the formal affirmation you repeat in a deliberate session, but the automatic inner speech that moves through your mind all day. The quiet comments, the background assumptions, the half-formed thoughts about who you are and what is available to you. I pointed again and again to the quality of this spontaneous inner speech as a direct indicator of the state you are currently inhabiting. When the state changes, the inner speech changes, not because you forced it to, but because you are now standing in a different position. The voice of someone inside the room sounds different from the voice of someone standing outside it. This means your current circumstances are not causes, they are effects. Effects of a state that has been consistently inhabited, usually without any deliberate choice, which means they can change. Not by fighting the circumstances directly, but by changing the inner position from which you meet them. The state before the evidence, that is what you are practicing. The settled inner quality that precedes the external confirmation, rather than waiting for the external confirmation to produce the settled quality. Because that second approach, wait for proof, then allow the state, is the long game most people play unknowingly, and the proof never fully arrives, because the state that would recognize it as natural has not been established first. Bring the state. Let the evidence respond to that. Here is what this looks like tonight. Sit somewhere comfortable, close your eyes, and instead of building toward a scene of receiving, instead of practicing the excitement of getting, go further. Place yourself several months past that moment. The initial excitement has long dissolved into familiarity. The thing is simply there now, part of your ordinary life, present as background the way furniture is present. Let the scene be quiet. Let it be unremarkable. A Tuesday evening or a slow Wednesday morning, notice one mundane detail, something on a nearby surface, a familiar sound from outside, the texture of an ordinary hour, and let what you want be there in the background of that scene, as naturally and unremarkably as your phone is present in your room right now. Not featured, not celebrated, just there, yours, ordinary. Do not reach for excitement. Do not try to force certainty. Just rest inside that quality for a few minutes. The ordinariness of the scene is not a failure of imagination. It is exactly what you are practicing. Then open your eyes and do not check. Do not scan your circumstances for signs. Do not audit whether you believe it. Go make your coffee. Look out your window. Move into the rest of your evening. Let the assumption rest the way you let everything else that is already true rest, quietly, without your constant attention, without needing your supervision. The reaching will try to return. You will likely notice it. A moment of listening for confirmation, a quick mental audit of whether the technique is working, a calculation of how many days have passed. When that happens, just notice it. Recognize the direction it is pointing, and gently return to the settled quality, not through force, but through remembering what it feels like to simply be inside something rather than working toward it. Now come back to where we began. Your phone, your bed, the mug from this morning. Nothing remarkable about any of them. Nothing you needed to earn through sessions or strive toward through sustained emotional effort. They are simply yours, held in your mind with complete and unremarkable familiarity. That is not a different kind of knowing from what you are building right now. It is the same quality, the exact same internal state. The only difference is that time and circumstance circumstance produced it for those things without your deliberate involvement. They became unremarkable because your relationship to them settled naturally without your managing it. What you are learning to do is reproduce that settling on purpose, before time has passed, before external circumstances have confirmed it. You are learning to occupy the inside of the room, to think from there, to react from there, to simply be inside there. Before the room exists in the world, you can touch and measure. Not toward, from, stop knocking, you are already inside. The door was never locked. You were standing outside it trying to make it open.